Hidalgo. The Hidalgo was the lowest rank of hereditary nobility in the Iberian kingdoms, particularly Castile. The word derives from hijo de algo, meaning son of something, indicating a family that could claim recognized noble descent. Hidalgos held legal privileges that set them apart from commoners: exemption from certain taxes, protection from torture and from physical punishment in the courts, and a formal social precedence that carried significant weight in a society organized around inherited honor. In practice, many Hidalgos were landless and poor, maintaining their noble status as a legal inheritance while living in circumstances barely different from those of the common people. The proliferation of Hidalgo families across Spain produced a vast minor nobility with strong pride in their lineage, and often very little material wealth to support it. Knight. The knight was not a hereditary title, but an honor conferred by the sovereign or a duly authorized lord for military service, valor, or later civil distinction. Knighthood originated as a military rank, denoting a warrior equipped to fight on horseback with full armor and retinue. By the high medieval period, it had been formalized into a ceremony of initiation called the dubbing, in which the candidate received a ritual stroke and swore oaths of loyalty and conduct. Military orders organized knights into disciplined brotherhoods with their own rules, properties, and hierarchies: the Knights Templar, the Knights Hospitaller, the Teutonic Knights, and dozens of national orders founded during and after the crusading period. In modern European monarchies, a knighthood remains an active honor, carrying the title Sir or Dame but no hereditary status. Baronet. The baronet is an English title, occupying an unusual position between the peerage and the knighthood. Unlike a baronet is not a peer and has no right to sit in the House of Lords. Unlike a knight, whose title expires at death, a baronet's title is hereditary, passing from father to son. The title was created by King James I in 1611 as a means of generating royal revenue sold to men of sufficient social standing for a fixed sum. A baronet is addressed as Sir, the same form as a knight, but distinguishes the hereditary title by appending BT after the surname. Baronetcies were created freely through the 17th and 18th centuries and became associated with the landed gentry rather than the high nobility, forming a substantial body of titled men who were not part of the peerage. Freiherr. The Freiherr, literally a free lord, was the German and Austrian equivalent of a baron. The title indicated a noble who held his land directly and freely, without owing service to any intermediate lord between himself and the emperor. In the hierarchies of the German and Austrian states, the Freiherr was the lowest rank of the higher titled nobility, placed above the untitled landed gentry and below the hereditary counts. The female equivalent was Freifrau, and Freiin for unmarried women. As the German and Austrian state systems were reorganized through the 18th and 19th centuries, the Freiherr title was standardized into formal patent hierarchies and increasingly awarded by the crown as a formal grant rather than inherited through ancient lineage alone. Boyar. The boyar was the highest rank of hereditary nobility in Russia and in several Slavic states of Eastern Europe, including Bulgaria, Wallachia, and Moldavia. In Russia, boyars formed the advisory council of the Tsar called the Boyar Duma and held the major military and civil offices of the medieval state. Boyar status derived from hereditary land ownership and proximity to the ruling dynasty rather than from formally granted titles. Peter the Great dismantled the boyar system in the early 18th century as part of his program of state modernization. He abolished the Boyar Duma, opened senior offices to men of non-noble origin who demonstrated effective service, and introduced a table of ranks that tied social status to active service to the state rather than to ancestry. The old boyar families were absorbed into this new service nobility. Baron. The baron was the lowest rank of the higher nobility across most of Europe. The title derives from a Germanic root meaning free man or warrior, and in the feudal system it designated a tenant-in-chief who held land directly from the king in exchange for military service. In England, barons who held their tenure by barony were summoned to Parliament and became the foundational membership of the House of Lords. The term baron thus became synonymous with a parliamentary peer in the English context. In France, the title was widely distributed and was the most common noble title in the kingdom by the early modern period. The English baron is the fifth and lowest degree of the British peerage, and holders are styled lord rather than baron in formal address. Viscount. The Viscount ranked between a count and a baron, and originated as the deputy or lieutenant of a count, acting on behalf of the count when he was absent or when the territory required a secondary administrator. The word derives from the Latin vicescums, literally a substitute count. In France, Viscount governed subdivisions of counties, particularly in Brittany, Normandy, and the southern regions. In England, the title was formally created as a rank of the peerage in 1440 and remains the fourth of the 5 degrees of the British peerage, below Earl and above Baron. It is the least common rank of the English peerage, and the one whose spelling most consistently surprises those who encounter it for the first time. Count and Earl. The Count was one of the foundational ranks of European nobility derived from the Latin comes, meaning companion, which had designated a member of the imperial court in late Roman administrative usage. In the Carolingian period, counts became the primary unit of royal administration, governing counties on behalf of the king in exchange for military service and loyalty. In England, the equivalent title was Earl, from the Old Norse jarl, meaning chieftain. The English Earl holds exactly the same position in the peerage hierarchy as the continental count, but the word count is not used as an English title. This is why the wife of an English earl is called a countess. The female form retains the continental etymology, even where the male form does not. Landgrave. The Landgrave was a German title, roughly equivalent to a count, but with broader territorial jurisdiction and a position of direct subordination to the emperor. The word means literally a count of the land. Landgraves typically governed regions too large or strategically important to be left to an ordinary count, and they reported directly to the emperor rather than through an intermediate lord. The Landgraviate of Thuringia and the Landgraviate of Hesse were the most significant, with Hesse surviving as a distinct political entity until its absorption into the Prussian state in 1866. The title did not exist outside the German-speaking world and reflects the fragmented territorial governance that characterized the Holy Roman Empire at its most complex. Margrave. The Margrave, from the German Markgraf, was the German equivalent of the French Marquis, the military commander and administrator of a march, a border territory. The Margrave of Brandenburg governed the northeastern frontier of the empire, and eventually became one of the 7 electors. His territory became the nucleus of the Kingdom of Prussia. The Margrave of Austria governed the eastern march, the frontier against the east, until Austria was raised to a duchy in 1156. As frontier threats receded, the Markgraf became a rank within the German princely hierarchy, placed between a duke and an ordinary count in the formal precedence of the empire, without implying any continuing frontier role. Count Palatine. The Count Palatine was a count who had been granted quasi-royal powers within his territory, allowing him to exercise rights that normally belonged only to the king. The word Palatine derives from the Latin palatinus, meaning of the palace, indicating an official whose authority was delegated directly from the crown. In the Holy Roman Empire, the Count Palatine of the Rhine was one of the 7 electors and one of the most powerful princes in Germany. In England, the counties Palatine of Chester, Lancaster, and Durham were territories where the lord exercised royal jurisdiction independently, including the right to hold courts and appoint judges without reference to the crown. The Duchy of Lancaster survives as a legal entity to this day, held personally by the British sovereign. Marquess. The Marquess ranked between a duke and a count, and derived from the Latin marchio, meaning lord of a march. A march was a border territory, and those who held the title were originally military governors, responsible for defending the kingdom's frontiers against incursion. The Spanish Marquess, the French Marquise, the Italian Marchesi, the German Markgraf, and the English Marquess all carry this etymology. As European borders stabilized during the late medieval period, the military rationale for the title disappeared, and it became a rank within the peerage hierarchy without implying any active frontier role. In England, the Marquess is the second rank of the peerage, historically the least common of the 5 degrees, and was often associated with territories on the Welsh and Scottish borders. Elector. The electors were the princes of the Holy Roman Empire who held the exclusive right to choose the Holy Roman Emperor. The College of Electors was formally codified by the Golden Bull of 1356, which established 7 electors. The ecclesiastical electors were the archbishops of Mainz, Cologne, and Trier. The secular electors were the King of Bohemia, the Count Palatine of the Rhine, the Duke of Saxony, and the Margrave of Brandenburg. The electoral dignity placed these princes above all other secular lords in the empire, and their votes gave them considerable political leverage over any candidate for the imperial throne. The college was reorganized several times before Napoleon dissolved the Holy Roman Empire in 1806, at which point the title and the institution ceased to exist. Prince. In European usage, the word prince carried 2 distinct meanings that existed simultaneously and caused considerable confusion in diplomatic precedents. The first was a sovereign prince, the ruler of a principality, a small but fully independent territory. The Prince of Monaco and the Prince of Liechtenstein both held and still hold this sovereign form. The second meaning was a noble rank inserted between duke and marquess in several continental systems, particularly within the Holy Roman Empire, where a first headed a noble house with the right of direct access to the emperor. In English usage, the word prince most commonly indicates a son of the monarch rather than a heraldic rank, which is why it does not appear as a degree of the English peerage. Duke. The duke was the highest rank of the non-sovereign nobility in most European systems. The word derives from the Latin dux, meaning military leader, reflecting the title's origins as a high command position in the late Roman army. In the feudal order, a duke governed a large territorial unit called a duchy as the king's principal vassal. Some dukes accumulated enough territory and resources to operate virtually as independent rulers. The Duke of Burgundy in the 15th century controlled lands stretching from the Swiss border to the North Sea and challenged the kings of both France and the Empire simultaneously. In England, the title of Duke was first created in 1337 and remains the highest rank of the British peerage. Archduke. The Archduke was a title used exclusively by the House of Habsburg and its branches. It ranked above a duke within the imperial hierarchy, but was not itself a sovereign title. The title was created in the 14th century, when the Habsburgs presented a document to the emperor to distinguish their ducal rank from that of all other dukes within the empire. The document, later shown to be a forgery, was nonetheless accepted and remained in force. By the 19th century, every male member of the Habsburg dynasty held the title of Archduke from birth. The proliferation of archdukes within a single family eventually made the title a marker of dynastic membership, rather than a reflection of personal authority over any particular territory. Grand Duke. The Grand Duke ranked immediately below a king and above an ordinary duke. The title designated the ruler of a territory that was sovereign in practice, but not formally elevated to a kingdom. The Grand Duchy of Lithuania was for several centuries one of the largest states in Europe, stretching from the Baltic nearly to the Black Sea. The Grand Duchy of Luxembourg, created in 1815, remains the only sovereign Grand Duchy in existence today. In the Russian Empire, Grand Duke was the title given to all male members of the ruling Romanov family, indicating proximity to the throne rather than any separate territorial grant. The title disappeared across most of Europe following the collapse of the German and Russian monarchies in 1918. King. The king was the sovereign of a kingdom, ruling by hereditary right over a defined territorial realm and a single people or nation. In the feudal order, the king was theoretically the source of all noble authority within his realm. Every title beneath him derived its validity from his grant or recognition. The distinction between a king and an emperor was broadly one of scale and composition. A king ruled one people, an emperor ruled many. In practice, the boundary was contested. The kings of England, France, Spain, and the Scandinavian states were entirely sovereign and owed allegiance to no higher secular lord. The monarchies of Europe were overwhelmingly hereditary, passing from father to eldest son under rules of succession particular to each dynasty. Emperor. The emperor was the highest secular title in European noble hierarchy, and in most cases a sovereign ruler of an empire encompassing multiple kingdoms and peoples. The Holy Roman Emperor, who ruled a complex confederation of German and Italian territories from 962 to 1806, was elected by a college of German princes rather than inheriting the title by birth alone. The Russian czars formally adopted the title of emperor from Peter the Great onward, asserting dominion over many subject peoples. Napoleon took the imperial title in 1804, reviving the Roman tradition to legitimize his conquests across the continent. The Austro-Hungarian emperor ruled until 1918. In each case, the imperial title claimed a sovereignty that no single royal title could encompass. Thanks for watching. Is there anything you would like me to delve into next? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, please like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video.